All right, welcome everybody to another session. I am so excited for this one, the parent reset, talking about decluttering. And I was just talking with AnnMarie earlier. I said I'm one of those people who like to keep things just in case I might need it. So I'm really excited about this session just to learn about decluttering and how that can help me as a parent and help my family as well. So take it away. If any questions come up, I'll send them to you at the end and then you can respond. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm very excited to be here and to speak with this group. This is a topic that I think we all live personally, in terms of all the stuff we have in our house. So I'm, looking very forward to talking with you and possibly hinting on those just in case items that were mentioned. So today I have just a quick agenda up here. This is what we're going to cover. I'll talk about a bit about myself and how I got into being a professional organizer. And then I'll go into a simple framework that I work with my clients that can help you get started, and then some strategies that actually work in a home with kids. Then how to filter decisions on when you are actually ready to declutter, what to do with those items. And then we'll talk a bit about how we can incorporate kids into this process, and the systems that we built in our house. Um, and then I'm not going to give you a to-do list or anything. This is really just to get some thoughts started. And we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. So I'll get right into it. So again, my name is AnnMarie Zezima. I'm the founder of a professional organizing company called Organized A to Z Inc. And I am a professional organizer, but I do a lot of decluttering. And so in that sense, it's more of like a coaching job where I work with, families and homeowners, some businesses in how to declutter their homes. So for years, I was in corporate work, and for many of those years, I was a buyer of home organization products. So how did I get into being in people's homes and organizing? So I came into this work because I lived it. As a parent, I understood firsthand how quickly a home can go from being manageable to being overwhelming, and how that clutter affects your mood, your relationships, your ability to be present with your family. And I really found this working through COVID and working at home, where like all that stuff in your house is kind of in your peripheral all day. And it was distracting me from calls. And then once I got off the calls, I wanted to deal with it. So then it was distracting me from my kids. And so I really found that bringing my professional life as a home organization buyer and this ability and need to change how our family lives. And I brought those together and I started working with families to help them create homes that actually function for them as a family unit. So today we're not talking about showrooms or minimalist spaces or the perfect pantry. Not that, like we're talking about real strategies for real families. So I want to start with this idea because I think if we kind of think about it as this one statement about what decluttering means when we bring it into our homes, this is what I want you to walk away with. It's not about just having less stuff. It's about matching your belongings and your possessions to the life that you're living today, not the life like you had before you had kids, not the life you imagine having one day, or that you think you're going to automatically transform into, but it's the life that your family is living right now in this season of who you are. And I hope that shift like helps get you through what we'll be talking about in the strategies. And if we think about it as just matching our stuff to who we are, it makes the letting go a bit easier. So why does family clutter feel so different than when we were a single person or when we were just a couple? And it's because life is different, right? Your family home has multiple people in it with multiple needs, different stages of development, multiple emotional attachments to objects. Kids are outgrowing things constantly, both clothing and toys, or things they like to play with, whatever. And some adults, we hold on to things a bit differently and have a bit more meaning to them. And then in a lot of cases, if we're in a partnership, our partner might have different thresholds of what counts as clutter, right? So like you're constantly in this struggle of, do we need this? I need this, you don't need it, that kind of thing. The other thing with families, of course, is we all know there's no downtime, right? When you're single, you might set aside a Saturday, put on some music, declutter a bit, go through a bin, like whatever it is. But as a family with, home, being at work, school activities, getting dinner on the table, you don't have a moment to step back and reclaim your space. And so the clutter like stays. And in most cases, it just keeps building because we're not dealing with the clutter that's there. And then, of course, there's emotional weight that comes with the belongings in our house, right? It sits in your peripheral vision all day, like I mentioned, and quietly adds to that mental load you're carrying, mental clutter, decision fatigue, like it all adds up, and it's got a lot of headspace that it's taking up. And then when it comes to our kids' stuff, right? Toys, artwork, gift from grandparents, letting go is like complicated, right? There's uh, guilt attached to things. There's knowing people spent money on like an expensive toy, but how do you just let that go? It's a lot harder than like looking at an old stack of magazines and getting that out the door. So you're not alone if you're having a harder time as a parent letting go of items where you might have been easy to let go when you were just a single person. So why does less clutter matter in our houses, especially when we have other people, children in it? Um, so if we get back to that emotional state, less clutter means fewer things that are competing for your attention, which means less cognitive overload for both you and your kids, right? Less mental load, less stuff competing for your attention, less decision fatigue. And this is like very apparent, right? When we have too many toys, the kids don't want to play with them because they don't know what they have, right? So that, toy box that's got a million things and like all these bits and pieces at the end, that creates decision fatigue for a child, the same way when our kitchen counter is crowded can create decision fatigue for us. So if our homes are clearer and calmer, our kids feel, calmer as well. When systems are obvious to kids and easy to use, you spend less time nagging and less time saying, "Where did you put this?" Or "Can you please put that away?" Because things have a home, and it's easy to find things because there is less stuff. And mornings will run smoother when we have less clutter. You're going to be able to find your keys. Your mittens will all be together and you're not going to be searching for one, or you know, boot is not under a snowsuit, that type of thing. So really there is a time factor when it comes to having less clutter. And you get that time back as we declutter and put these systems in our houses. And the last component that I like to talk about is what we can build with our kids as we go through this process. When kids have age appropriate ownership of their space, it builds independence and confidence and autonomy, and they will be more likely to engage in this process of decluttering and putting things back. And that takes mental load and time off of our schedules as well. So, all of these benefits, but why don't we get started? And the real barrier to getting started isn't that it's too much stuff, like it's not that tangible component, it's that mental state of being overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed is what stops most families from beginning a decluttering and organizing project or process. We think that we need to do the whole house, and then we need a full weekend to get this done. I need to be mentally ready, and so it waits. That task waits, and the clutter stays, and the clutter grows. So I want to offer a reframe on this. You don't need a perfect home. You don't have to have your whole home done. You need a functional one. You need one that easily resets, and you need to start somewhere. And that shift from I need to fix everything to I need to just start somewhere is where the momentum will begin. And so now we'll go into what are some of those strategies that can help us work through this overwhelmed feeling. So when I work with families, I use this simple 4-step process, and we'll go into some of these a bit more detail. But I wanted to start here. And the first step is clear the obvious excess. In most homes, there are easy wins in when we go through decluttering. So I like to say, let go of what's done. And that is things that are easily disposed of, junk mail, packaging for items, just stuff that has collected that is going to end up in the garbage or the recycling. Start with that. Then we can talk about items that the kids have outgrown, items that are broken, expired pantry or medication, things that have no decision making and are done. And it doesn't have any emotional weight attached to it. It's got to get out the door, and we know it. And there's no decision making involved. And these easy items will help build momentum to the next set, which is reducing volume and reducing duplicates. So this is where you start to have to make a few decisions, right? You look at categories within our homes that might have duplicate items or too much of the same thing that can do the same task. So the one I always like to use, the example I use is I have 40 t-shirts, but I'm on a 1 to 2 week wash cycle, which probably means I only need about 15 to 20 t-shirts. So when we start to think about how we're living and what we really need to live that life, then you start to be able to see places you can cut down, right? Too many linens is another big one. Like you have 3 beds, but you have 15 sets of linens, probably can cut that back. 10 water bottles for a family of 3, pare back what you're actually using or what your favorites are. The third step is where we start to build systems and preparing categories to set the family up on what these systems will look like, not just yourself, because if it's got to be maintained by everybody, not just you, or it won't last and it'll just become another task on your to-do list. So we got to think about things like not only where should this live, but where will everyone in this house actually put this? And this can be, as simple as putting things down to kid level so they can be part of the system that is in place of putting toys away or whatever it is. Or I always liked to keep my Tupperware and plastic container drawer low because that was something that the kids could access themselves. So putting those systems in place that allows the whole family to participate and keep them up. And then the last one, I'm not going to go into a lot today, but I did want to mention it because I don't want you to start here. Sentimental curation, so going through all the memorabilia, the keepsakes, the schoolwork, this should never be the first place you start when you start a decluttering project. It's always the last step. Because there is so much emotional attachment to these items, sometimes perceived financial value if we're talking about old collectibles. And so if we start here, it's very overwhelming. So if you do the easy stuff first, then you build the momentum and the confidence to get you to a point where you can tackle the emotional items and they won't feel as heavy. Okay, so we have a little bit of a framework now. How do we actually get started? And this is probably the most practical thing I'm going to leave you with today. And that is start with one small space. That can be a drawer, a corner of a room, one bin, and make one decision and finish it. You don't have to start with the whole kitchen, start with the junk drawer. Don't start with a whole bedroom, start with your nightstand, not the whole playroom, one bin. And this the completion of these tasks will build the momentum and in a lot of cases energize you to keep going. So when you finish something even small, your brain will register it as a win and that will make the next step easier. And eventually you'll be able to get to those sentimental items. But we're not, like I said, we're not starting there. We want to start with these small spaces and finish it. So, what are some ideas for small spaces? Um, like I said, some of the more common ones are a junk drawer, a bathroom cabinet, the linen closet, expired items, duplicate or broken items, outgrown kids' clothing. So these are all either it's a small space physically or it's a small category of items like expired items. And I'm just going to talk about expired for a second because my brain always goes to pantry items when we're talking expired, but there's medication as well, pantry items, sunscreen is a big one in a house full of kids. So just all of those little pieces add up and create a lot of clutter that we can get rid of quite easily. So these are the places we want to start. We do not want to start with those sentimental items. Don't start with photo albums, memory boxes, sentimental bins, or big spaces like a whole playroom or a shared storage rooms in the basement or anything with big feelings attached. When you start in here, it will be discouraging. And you'll walk out of the room feeling overwhelmed, or you'll get in a fight with your partner if you're doing this together. And so that's really why we have to save these hard um, items for when we have momentum and energy. So we've picked our small space. Let's start like with a kitchen drawer. How do we decide what we're keeping or not keeping? There's lots of different theories out there. I know everybody knows about Marie Kondo, about does this bring me joy? I'm a bit more practical. I like to think about like if I lost this in a fire, would I, be sad and want to buy a replacement? So whatever the theory is that you use, it really comes down to some basic questions that we have to ask ourselves. And that's, do I use it? Do I love it? Would I buy it again today? Do I have something else that does the same job? Is this a just in case item? Does this support my life right now? And you don't need to answer yes to all of these, but if you can't answer yes to any of them, it's probably safe to let it go. And I do want to touch on the just in case one because this is a big item, a big one for families. We hold on to so much just in case because the just in case items, but just in case items also come with a carrying cost, right? We're keeping items in our house or our homes that we don't use. They're just taking up space and mental load and all those other things I talked about. And then it also makes it harder to find things that you actually use every day because there's all this other stuff in the way. So some of the just in case items I'll just mention are electrical cords. I've been, my own house included, but I've been in so many homes with boxes of electrical cords that we save. A lot of cases we don't own those electronics or appliances that go with those items. So we're just saving cords. Um, or there's duplicates of things. And I know for some things you want a couple duplicates, but a lot of cases there's just boxes and boxes of cords we don't use. And then the other one that is kind of silly, but I'm pretty sure we're all guilty of it is condiment packages. We all save those little condiment packages that come with takeout for one day I might go on a picnic and need one. I'm not sure, but we save those, and in most cases they probably expire before we use them. And maybe you are a family that uses them, but in most cases, just think about that type of item that's living in your home that you're keeping just in case. And then the other one um, is the does it support my life right now? And we've talked a little bit about this. And this one is really, um, is this who I am today? And the example I personally use is as a mom with kids and at holiday time, I grew up with always having a lot of baking during the holidays. And I, bought all the things to make my house a baking house when I had kids and we started hosting and things like that. And slowly through the years, it got to be less and less baking. And yes, it was a little bit because of a time constraint, but it was also because I realized I don't really like to do this. I was in this mindset that baking and the holidays went together and I needed to keep all my baking stuff. And like maybe one day I'd start making pastry. And so I kept all that. And so I realized in the past couple years, this is not who I am or what I want to be doing during the holidays. And so I had to like let all that stuff go, and realize I'm not going to turn into someone that I'm not. And that's probably a bigger example, but I'm sure we all have craft supplies or things that we think we're going to get to one day, but as a busy family you might not be there. So these are, like I said, some decisions that or some questions that can help with decisions. So if we've gone through, a kitchen drawer or a bathroom cupboard and we have a bunch of stuff now that we're willing to let go, where does it go? So I know many of us have probably, done a good cleanup of our closets and then had a bag ready for donations, and then it sits in the car all day for multiple days or weeks at a time. So I once you've made the decision to let something go, you want to actually have it leave your house as quickly as possible, because then it just becomes clutter in a different bag. So let's start there. And then where can items go when we are ready to let it go? And the big one, of course, we all feel a bit better about is donating. And that can be to thrift stores or community organizations or specialty programs for furniture, books, eyeglasses, that type of thing. What I recommend is that as a family, you pick a couple charities or organizations together. And so when you go through a decluttering process, the kids are part of the decision making, knowing that it's going to a family or maybe it's going to their local daycare. And so when we make them part of the decision making, there's a bit of ownership and autonomy that goes with it, and they're willing to let things go. Um, or gifting is another one that kids also have an easier time with. On our street, we have a couple toddlers that are quite a bit younger than my kids, and so when they're ready to let something go, it's like, oh, I'll give this to Sophie, or yeah, like little Rory down the street can use my old bike, and they love that somebody else can use their items. So when we can pick gifting as a an outlet, the kids are also more likely to participate. The other items that are, I do want to touch on are selling items with real resale value. The after market on some items is great. However, it does require a lot of work, a lot of time to set items up online or set up a garage sale or go to consignment shops. You can be involved in, negotiations or ghosting of negotiations. And if you're selling furniture, you've got to sit and measure things. So selling is a great avenue. It's just it requires a lot more time than I think people realize. So if you're going to venture there, just have a lot of patience. And then obviously there's recycling of easy items like magazines and things like that in our house. But we also have to think about, again, some things that require a bit more work, like electronics and batteries and paper shredding and textiles. And so again, if we want to be responsible citizens, we should be working through the items correctly. And again, that's another great place to help kids get involved in how to sort those items and ensure that they don't end up in landfills. And then obviously things that are at end of life, that's when we can dispose of things. But the key for all of this is to have a plan before you start so that things actually get out the door and move out and not just move around. All right. So what are some easy strategies that can work in a home? I always like, we said to start small, so we've talked about that. Another thing that's great is when we start a decluttering project, especially our very first one, set a timer, set a 15 to 20, 30-minute timer, put on some music and just go. And most of us can fit that in. And you'd be surprised how much you can get done in 15 minutes, especially when you're dealing with a drawer or a cupboard. Um, you can get the kids involved. Maybe with the kids, you do a 5-minute timer, and how many things can you find in 5 minutes that you can donate, or a little scavenger hunt, find 10 things. These little challenges help the kids get involved and they like it. And they're quick and tangible and a little even fun. And when we can have the kids lead the decisions, it's a lot easier for them to let go and decide what stays. And they feel they're being respected and they'll probably follow through. The last two tips is, one is have a donation bag or box as well as a garbage bag ready to go. Bring those into whatever room you're working with in before you start, because sometimes when we don't have that, we get distracted or things end up back in the location because we'll say, oh, I'll grab a bag later. So having the bags ready is great. And the last is celebrate your win. Take before and after photos. Count how many bags you've cleared out. Have the kids count how many toys they're giving to the kid down the street or whatever it is. Progress is the best motivator when going into these projects. So the last topic I want to cover is building systems that kids can be a part of. So the idea in when I work with clients is to ensure that whatever systems we're putting in place, that their kids can either now participate in them, or, if they're really small, that they can eventually participate and be a part of it. So very simple things are the best with when we're trying to incorporate kids. Um, so one bin with one label of products, so cars or stuffed animals, and have the kids help out in how to name them. As an adult, you'd probably say stuffed animals, but they might want stuffy. So anything that they can participate in will give them ownership of that, and they will most likely stick with it. Visual systems are best. So, if we're working with labels, especially with little ones, we can put pictures as well as the words, and like I said, categories they can name themselves. Age appropriateness obviously matters, but even toddlers can choose which toys they want to keep or give away. School age kids can manage, a backpack zone. Teenagers ideally can manage their own room. And it's about really creating routines over rules. So if you have a simple system like the bin system, it's a reset routine versus a rule, right? 10-minute tidy before bed, or after school when you get home, quick minute tidy of the shoes at the front door. This will also help eliminate ongoing battles, because that's not something we want to get into, and it really takes up a lot of mind space. I also like to suggest zoning in a home for shared spaces. So when my guys were really little, I had them with age appropriate zones. So my little guy at 4 was responsible for, putting all the shoes neat and tidy at the front door. And my 7-year-old was responsible for keeping the coffee table cleared. And it also was easy to do those resets, because all I would have to say is, you're responsible for your zone. Go, it's zone time, go do it, versus can you please put these books away? Can you do this? So all this will create independence, because you're involving them in the decisions, you're giving them ownership, and if they feel capable, they will act capable. So my final thought I want to leave you with is that you don't need a perfect home. You need one that feels lighter and less chaotic. And so I hope that you've learned today that clutter is not a character flaw. It's the weight of a busy family, and you don't have to tackle it all at once. We start with one small zone, we use the decision filter, and we build systems that our kids can be a part of. And again, the goal is not perfection. It's a home that works for your family right now. Calmer home doesn't happen all at once. It happens one decision at a time. And you've already made the first step by showing up today. So I want to just a quick thank you to the group and this community. If you need any help jump-starting on any tasks, I have a couple offers. For those of you who live a bit farther, we could do a decluttering session. And then for those of you in the GTA, I have some spots available. I know virtual cluttering doesn't sound like a thing, but it actually is amazing how much you can get done in a 90-minute session. So just some options to put out there for this group, because I am so happy that I was here to be a part of it and that I was invited. And thank you all very much. So I will pass it back over for questions if there's any time. And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, AnnMarie, and thank you for sharing how people can connect with you. There were two questions, and I don't know if
Sure.
you can, I think you kind of answered them briefly, but the one was, I keep thinking I will sell items and I don't want to lose the money. How do I let that stuff go? And then the second one was, how do I deal with the exhaustion of cleaning up and then my little ones mess things up again?
Yeah, so the selling, the tip I actually gave myself because especially with clothing that you can afford when you're single, and items that are a bit more expensive. What I always put a time limit or a dollar threshold. So like if I'm going to post something on Facebook Marketplace, I give myself 2 weeks. If I've had no interest and no bites on it, it's not of value to someone else. So it's probably going to be easier for me to let it go. Or the other part is having a dollar threshold, which if I'm not going to get $30 to replace this or $50, whatever your own threshold is, because it does take time to set these things up, then you know what, it's not worth it. Especially if I'm selling something for $10, that's not worth it. Like just let it go, even though it might have cost me something or reminds me of a time in my life. So that's my easy tip. If we can always talk about different avenues and ways to try to sell things, but really it's about what is my threshold to get this out the door.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay,
once again. The
no
second
problem.
question would probably just answer via email, but
Okay,
thank you once again. I really
no problem.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks.